Good morning. Let's go over to Target on a day chart. So we were here on Target. It was having a pump and we had a lot of option flow coming into Target. And that was the reason, that was our trade idea, was that option flow coming in. So we ended up taking an at the money, a debit spread with some easy rules, right? Cut it at a 50% loss. If you make a 50% profit, start removing, right? Take some of your profits off the table and let some run. So we got up to about 22, 25%. And then all of a sudden that Monday came and we were already, I think either by Monday or Tuesday, my automations already got me out on my 50% loss. And so that trade is basically done. While I was watching it, I could definitely see, and I remember us talking about like when we were ready to get into that trade, it's like, hey, when you start seeing, the thesis, right, remove itself. So you have a thesis. We had a relative strength on Target on Friday. It was actually moving against the market. The entire market was down. I was speculating that, okay, this option flow was really helping it out. And then as, the tide started to change, the market continued to go lower, it dragged Target down. And that's typically what happens. So think about that when you're talking about, relative strength comparably to the entire market. The entire market has way more strength than just one independent stock or two independent stocks, regardless of how much option flow is coming in. And there was a lot of option flow. We're seeing a ton of option flow right now in some of these names that we're going to go over, but just wanted to do a quick review here on a 15-minute chart. How are we doing? We gapped up today, right? At the open, we gapped up and it looks like, this high right here of 599. So really the target, right? There was a lot of open interest in 600. And so we were really looking to see if we could surpass 600. And so right now on a 15-minute chart, not yet, looking like we're, basically just basing right here. I really haven't done a reversal, really looking good. So we could just keep going higher with the inauguration coming up. This could be kind of a positive, I don't know, spin or a frame that you could put on it. Just a fresh view coming in. Could be one of the reasons why we're also seeing a ton of institutional flow in two names, DJT, which is Trump's, I believe, communications basically. And then we also have Tesla, a ton of calls coming in for Tesla at the 450 and the 500. So you can see the institutions lateraling into those with a very short option date. So when you kind of see the short option date, you know that they're also, basically programming in some short-term plays here, and that's for next Friday. We take a look at SPY looking good. You could see the momentum on a 15-minute, just really as soon as we broke the zero line, you could see the momentum staying above that zero line, being above the 100. A lot of momentum in the market today. Let's take a look at QQQ. QQQ also momentum staying strong, a little bit choppy here now as we're just kind of basing, really wanting, depending on your time frame, right? Really wanting to see the momentum stay strong. As we look at this maybe on a 4-hour, wow, you could really see it. We still have a little bit more room to run. I'm really glad that you can see this trend line right here, this dotted trend line. Dotted trend line, look at how it's touching it and coming right back down, right? Now on a 4-hour, we're really looking for swing trades, right? I mean, the 4 hours, typically like the daily, really looking for like some swing trades. Are we going to have a continuation or are we hitting resistance? That is where we're at right now as we're looking at the cues right at that line. We really want to break above that 523. I would just clear it and say 524. Anything above 524, where are we heading to? Well, our last pivot 4-hour high at 527.86. So, but we need to get over this resistance level, and it is holding as resistance. We popped through it, but will we see us actually come back above it and then use it as support, right? That's really what we're looking for continuation. If you are along more of a swing trader, really looking for not only a week, but several weeks play, really looking to see price break above this level on this trend line on a 4-hour, use it as support, and then bounce and break this 527 to go higher. So that's what I'm looking at the Qs. Looking really nice though on a 4-hour, I have to say. Typically speaking, when we get that momentum that's up above this 200 range on momentum, you can see us kind of always when we hit that 200, we might stay there for a little bit, and you can see how price kind of stays there, and then you can see when, you know, the momentum starts to die down, and so does price. And the reason is because the momentum actually drives price. So when you're looking at momentum, you can really kind of get an idea. And if I back up here on the Qs, look at how, you know, when you look at it, how it follows, right? How it follows momentum pretty well. Every once in a while, we'll get a divergence. The funny thing about divergences is that, you know, if price, as an example, is moving down and you see momentum moving up, that would indicate, hey, look, we're in an off-balance situation. Momentum is no longer in control, and price will start to fall in line once things just catch up to it. And so typically that can give you an early indication of, hey, we're going to get a, you know, a price change. Because typically price will follow momentum. And if you go back in time on any chart, on any time frame, you'll be able to see how momentum actually helps you identify where we're headed. So typically speaking, once we hit that 200 line, we come back down to regroup, come back up. So we'll have to see if, and look at this, the Qs when we pull back a little bit. Boy, that looks really good. This would be great, by the way, for an automated trade where you could set it and forget it, by the way. We could use our take profit, which is average true range. We could actually take a look at like 524.80. We can make that 525 to get into a, and this would be for a swing long, right? On the Qs. Looking really nice here. Let's take a look at DIA. DIA, oh wow, nice little pump on a 4-hour as well. You could see where DIA actually broke its trend line here, consolidated, and now we have break above that consolidation and we're heading higher. You could see that we're actually surpassing the 200 level right here, and I would expect probably a pullback after this really strong day. I don't know when that's going to be, but I would start to think about that as DIA. What is that, $4.40 thereabouts? And then let's take a look at IWM. Kind of stalling here, almost looks like a double top. Kind of broke it right here, just a tad, but it's fighting it. All these support and resistance levels are, I call, fake out zones. And that just, you know, leads me to identify that when you get to a support or resistance level, it's not necessarily a level where if you had your profits, as an example, you just want to hold on for dear life. You really want to start taking your profits off the table when you're hitting these support or resistance levels, depending on if you're in a call or put, right? Because these areas act as consolidation areas, and in consolidation areas could have a lot of play. And that play, right, could create a lot of fake outs depending on how you're looking at the chart and analyzing that trade. So if you can get a clear, nice, clear candle on any time frame, depending on what you're trading, if you can get a nice, clear candle away from either above it or below that support or resistance level, that can give you that confirmation evidence. A lot of people just don't have the patience. If you can develop patience in this business, you're far beyond a lot of traders. So that is where we're at on IWM. So let's take a look at some of these tickers that I've seen a lot of institutional flow come into. Ooh, and you can see a hood here on a 4-hour breaking above that trend line, right? I love these vertical trend lines. Very easy. By the way, guys, you know, when you talk about, you know, a simple strategy, right? Trading trend lines is a very simple strategy on any time frame, on a 5-minute, if you were day trading, for swings on a 15, 1 hour, 4-hour. You can really identify some really nice plays, and you could cut your losers short. Those trend lines typically, they hold on really well. Now, not only do the trend lines hold well, but also pivot highs and lows, right? we get our support and resistance typically from pivot highs and lows. Those really act as really good support and resistance levels, and so do trend lines. You'll often see trend lines act as resistance, pull back, resistance, and now we're doing a breakthrough. So what do you have to consider when price is at a trend line or a horizontal support and resistance line? You're like, is that line going to hold as resistance, or are we going to break through? Now, as of right now, I would say on hood, this is a fake out zone. So you would really have to, we're a Friday, it's up X, going into a swing trade here. Is this going to hold? And typically speaking on a 4-hour, let's look at a 15 now that we're kind of identifying us getting into a trade. As we go to a smaller time frame, you can actually see that we're at a double top, right? From the pre-market here, we're at a double top. We actually need to break above this little area here on hood. I would love to get into, as an example, a long call when we break above that 48.03 level, because I recognize that this is acting as resistance. It came at the open and it backed off. It, again, the second 15-minute candle, we surpass it, we back off, we hit it again. And all of these just represent a 15-minute candle each and every time. How many times is it going to hit this thing, right, before it actually breaks through? So we could have this type of action for a while before it does. Do you really want to get into a position where right when you get in, it starts to back off? No one likes to lose 20%, 30, 50% right from the get-go. You're really looking for the breakout. That's why automation actually can be such a great tool in your tool belt for trading. It's an excellent tool, and utilizing as an example targets from ATR, average true range of this stock, could really help out. You could say, hey, above 48.03, you could pad it a little, knowing that everything that we do in trading today is already built in basically in the platform. Everybody knows these levels, right? It's not rocket science. The platform is actually giving you these support and resistance levels. So knowing that, right, and knowing that everyone knows these levels, couldn't you just pad it a little bit just in case there was, any institutions there that were doing stop hunting? You can Google that, stop hunting, right? Just to take out stops as an example. Sure. And that's what I often do, is just pad it. So on a stock like this, you could easily pad this by 20, 25 cents as an example, and just say, okay, 48.25 as an example. Then I'm in for a long call or a call debit spread. So you could do something to that event. Let's take a look at Riot. So on a 15, we're kind of holding at resistance right here on hood, looking for a breakout. So Riot got to kind of a high here near the 1441 zone and then pull back. Ooh, I actually like this only because it's pulling back to this support level. Now, when we break out, 15-minute, by the way, is a really good short-term trend indicator. If we look at how the stock has been performing this morning, right? We just went all the way up. We got a slight pullback here. And where are we pulling back to? That vertical trend line, as well as the 20, which I love. So we are above it, we're staying above it, and it looks good. I really like this. See if I can show you. I really like this when momentum, as an example, comes down like this, doesn't break the zero line though, and then pops back up. That's just like a wave of energy, right? The wave of energy is just coming back up, ebbs and flows, just like the ocean. I often make an analogy about surfing, the ocean, and trading, because there's a lot of similarities. And so as a wave, right, has all that power to push you to a level, then all of a sudden the energy has to subside a little bit. It builds its energy again for the next, right, for the next wave. So that's what we're looking at here on Riot. So I like this setup on Riot if this area can hold. The other thing that you can do, because we're so tight right there on support, is, your risk versus reward is so much greater in a play like this, because you know exactly where your support is, right? And so with that, you're saying, hey, I'm going to go long here. But if I break that level at 14, right, you could see it right here. That 14 level is where my 20 is at. If I break that level, can I pad it a little, make it 1385, 1390? Absolutely. You could do that, and then you just automate the trade and then let it work for you. Or you could sit here manually and watch it all day, but I don't really like doing that. So there's Riot. All right, so let's take a look at DJT. I didn't name this. Trump Media. There we go. Communications. Trump Media. Wow, look at this high right here. So we have this pump and we're breaking the 20. You know what I say about that. We break below that 20, but we have another trend line here, and that trend line is pointing in the upward direction, right? So if we can hold this trend line, could I use my ATR? I mean, this is a proprietary indicator that we have called the bullseye, but could I use that level as an example? And look at where that level is, by the way, almost exactly where the last pivot high is. If I thought that this was going to pump over the weekend or maybe next week after the inauguration and speeches and all that, if I thought that this was going to pump, I could easily automate an order that said, hey, and if you're using ATR, you can too, by the way, say, hey, at 42.15 I'm in, and at 41.81 I'm out, right? You could get into it right now, by the way, and just say, ooh, I think we're going to pop back up and continue on the higher end. If that was your analysis, you could say, okay, my stop loss is at 41.81, knowing what my ATR value is today on a 15-minute chart, and then say, okay, that's my line in the sand. I could pad it a little as well. But so both of these, DJT on a reversal here looks good, not for a breakdown, but actually another touch. And possibly, because you have a low and a high, and then we have a higher low if this changes and we get a green candle. You could also wait for that green candle before you start. And then what are we looking for? Well, we're either looking for a double top or we break the top and go higher. So that is another thing. The only downfall I will tell you about automations is that if the automation gets triggered overnight, and it won't, I guess that's the negative, is that even though you had programmed a certain level, when the market is closed, your automation, even though it's in the queue and waiting, it doesn't actually trigger the trade until market hours open. And oftentimes what you'll see, and I just leave my automations on for the week, and the reason is because oftentimes you'll see us gap up only to come back down to fill the gap and then to come back up. So sometimes, those gaps, a lot of brand new automators will go, oh, the level was correct, but it did it overnight, so it didn't trigger my trade, and I canceled my OCO order. And I'm like, no, don't cancel the OCO order. Let it come back down. The entry that you actually are using, based, of course, on support and resistance or a trend line, these levels are really good. And so even though it broke out overnight, it may come back down to fill that gap only to go in the opposite direction. You already have your stop loss set, so you don't have to worry about that. So I actually like DJT, if I can get that right. And then let's look at Tesla. We're always in and out of Tesla. Tesla's always, an easy name to trade, right? I mean, it's got so much volume. It's always moving. There's always news. He's getting a really good day too. We have the inauguration coming up. He's part of that whole thing. And so, basically a really nice news event here. As I look at the 4 hour, as we talk about trend lines, this is perfect. So we actually have a trend line break right here, right? We got a trend line break. I would love to see on a 4 hour, a candle that clears it. Why? Well, typically speaking, we could, let's see, this was at 427. We could see this come back down and touch it, right? Maybe later in the day, as an example, since this is our first 4 hour candle. So let me dive down now. As I'm looking at that now, you can actually see 439 right here, really acting as resistance. So, yeah, this one I wouldn't want to go long here. Wouldn't want to go long. And look what happens every time we hit this trend line. Let me just go back a little bit. We hit it, we come back down to the pivot low, right? That's what's making these trend lines, are the pivot highs and lows. We come back up during a trading day. The shaded area, by the way, is the overnight action, okay? Come back up during the trading day. What do we do overnight? Boom. You see this? And you could kind of see this play out. We hit it during the trading day, come back down overnight. Hit it during the trading day, come back down. And so with that little repetition that we're identifying, you could probably see this move up to the 440 level. Well, we still have a little bit of room to run. We broke the last pivot high. This is actually considered a breakout. I actually like this. And I would say, hey, we need to break out of 434.68 because that's this candle's high right here on a 1 hour. If we break out of 434.68, let's just make it 470, 434.70, we could actually get to, right, 422. So we have a lot of room to run here still today unless we come back down here. And what are we going to do? We're going to actually retest support. We broke out of resistance. It acts as support. We've tested it one time. Does that mean that that's it? We're clear? It does if we break out of that. If we don't break out of that 434.68, we could come right back down and test it again. Oftentimes, price, and that's why I call them a fake out zone, price will come, beat its head up on resistance, come back down to support, and it will do this a number of times until it finally breaks out. And so with that, even with the horizontal trend lines, right? Even with the horizontal pivot high here, it may come back down. I'm not really too excited about the Tesla. So, but gosh, there was so much flow. Out of all of these that I just listed, Tesla had the most, 450s and 500s. You know what? It's hard for me to say no on Tesla. Tesla's always a fun one. So on an hourly, it looks good. On a 15, we're coming into, again, that consolidation area. So let me program a trade in here that says at 435. 435 on a 15-minute chart, I want to go long on Tesla. How would I do that with a debit spread? And let me show you. Now, something interesting happened. Schwab's been making some updates to the thinkorswim platform, and I was really surprised. I was actually in a call debit spread on Tesla this week, and on Monday, we had a candle that had some volatility in it, and it got me out, even though I was totally in the money by many, many dollars, I might add. I was really, really upset about it, and I called Schwab about my automation, and I said, what in the heck? I had a 50% stop loss on this. I'm in the money. Both strikes are in the money, and that volatility got me out. Of course, they explained it away, but they did say that they made adjustments. I said, would you do me an adjustment and say, hey, when there's a position that's totally in the money, I mean, there's just no way that there was any real loss to that position, that you not get anybody out. Like, don't tell me about the dangers of automation. I mean, I know what the risks are, but that just seems ridiculous, and he's like, you know what? That's an interesting thought. I'm going to send that up the chain to see if they can do something about that, because we have had a lot of complaints. So guys, if you're doing your automations and you're using debit spreads, you may want to just set the debit spread and manually watch it, because boy, I would have made a nice paycheck this week on that Tesla debit spread. I'm very sad about that. So let's go over to our trade tab. We're going to go ahead and set up an automation here. We're going to do 7 days out. We know that Monday it's closed. Look at the price, by the way, for a long call on Tesla. $1,295 is what that represents. I'm going to go over here to the vertical, which is spreads, right? Vertical. I'm going to go over now and just get an at the money, which is a 435 for 437.5. And I'm just going to program, I'm going to automate just the entry for this, okay? And for the reasons I just told you, I will manually watch this on Tuesday. Debit spreads are so much easier to watch than long calls and long puts. They don't move as quickly. Less risk, less reward. So with that in mind, I'm going to set this up and say, okay, I'm going to hit I know I have to show this. I have to go back and forth. Okay. So what I'm going to do, what do we say here? 435. So I'm going to go over here, and all you have to do is click under this box, say method is mark. The first one is less than or equal to. The second one is greater than or equal to. If you scroll down here, you can actually see your programming while you're doing it. So we just Tesla mark. We're going to use the default. This is going to be greater than or equal to, and we're going to say 435. So if it happens today and I'm busy on appointments, it'll just get me in the trade. Now, I don't know what the option contract is going to be, right, when we hit 435. I have no idea what the price is going to be. So what I do here now is I come over here and I say, hey, I want to buy the ask, which is the higher end of the two. Oh, okay. So you see how this is not working? This is another little thing that I've noticed since we've switched over from TDA to swab. I actually have to do this on the front end of it. For those of you that are automators, put your comments in the box if you've had some issues since the changeover, and I have. So since I can't do it here, let's see if I can say good to cancel. I can't even do it there. So because of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just save my order. So I have the 435 in. I'm going to come over here and say bid. Excellent. It has 00. That's exactly what we want. Excuse me, this should be ask. We buy the ask and we sell the bid. Sorry about that. So we're basically, paying what the asking price is what we're doing. So I don't want to give them any more, right? I'm not like overbidding in this marketplace. I'm just giving them what they're asking for. So as I give them what they're asking for, it is a limit order, and I'm going to say good till cancel because I don't know when this is going to happen. Okay. And if you want to check your programming, you just go right back to the little gear icon. So as we come back to the programming, this is what it should look like. Tesla mark greater than or equal to 435. This should be 00. You're buying the ask, and we have a limit order. So we're all good. Now I just save it and I confirm it, and it's just waiting in my folder. Me out of there. So my apologies, but we now have our order waiting, and we're basically saying, hey, look, we want us to break that last high and by the way, that's a trading strategy all on its own if you didn't know. Anytime a stock breaks its current day's high, that is a long, and vice versa for the short. If it breaks today's low, that is a short strategy. Easy strategies, just like the vertical trend or just like the horizontal support and resistance from our last pivot high and low. These are excellent strategies that you can use, not only day trading, but swing trading. Well, guys, I hope you got your Tesla call debit spread. We'll check in next Friday and see what happens. I hope you have a nice weekend.